You up on trades and why you move? You ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release. We started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub. So start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sipping through sifting through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stu and JT Brew.
Stu with JT Brew. I'm your host, JT. Today, we got some special guests as we come to talk about everything the Minnesota Vikings, the draft, sleepers, risers, schedules, kind of what we're expected from this team this year. I want to thank Luke Braun from the Lockdown Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I also got Cody Folden from Dynasty Pros, one of our guys over there helping out on the team. Let's get everything started here, and the Stu begins now. Let's start things off. You guys kind of tell me, Luke, give me a heads up on Locked On Vikings, kind of what you do and kind of how you got started with that.
Yeah, I am the Vikings host on the Locked On Network. The Locked On Network has daily podcasts for all your favorite sports teams. There's one, I see a lot of Mizzou stuff. There's one for Mizzou, all the major pro sports teams, all that, Denver Nuggets, you name it. I've been doing that this will be my 5th season doing that. If you count, I joined kind of in the middle of 2018, so maybe my 4th if you want to count it that way. But that's a daily show on the Minnesota Vikings. I also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. We're going to talk a lot about the rookies. I have a video on on 5 of the 6 up so far, so you can find film breakdowns there as well.
Very nice. Cody, tell the guys about yourself and kind of why you're a Vikings fan and jumping on here to talk about the Vikings with us.
Yeah, like JT said, I'm Cody from Dynasty Pros. Got my Dynasty Pro shirt right here. Became a fantasy football writer for them in beginning of March. And, man, why did I become a Vikings fan? Well, I live in the Dakotas, so it was either the Denver Broncos or the Vikings that were on all the time. And I picked the Vikings, and I have been ever since the Dante Culpepper days. I love my Dante Culpepper. So.
Very nice. Yeah, was a big Dante guy, Randy Moss back in the day. But a couple years with Randall Cunningham were electric for sure. Let's jump into the rookie class. Kind of starting things off, first round, 23rd overall pick. A guy that I loved at USC, thought was a good fit here. Jordan Addison, wide receiver from USC, going to the Vikings. Kind of, Luke, what are your thoughts about Addison on this Minnesota team?
Yeah, I have a couple of videos up on him, a couple of podcasts, a couple of Patreon videos up on him that done plenty of work. I think the thing that sticks out with him the most is that he's very – you'll hear like savvy route runner a lot, and for me, I like to get a little more detailed with that is – he understands defensive back technique really, really well. He really studies his opponents, and he studies the coverages. And so he kind of knows, hey, this guy is coached on this specific look to prioritize the outside versus the inside. So I'm going to really make him think that it's an outside route so that I can cut inside and really make him think he was right. There is this sort of level of thought to it that you can see in his routes. The thing about him is that his speed, it's not elite. It's okay. It's good enough, but it's not elite. And he's small and not elite speed tend to produce a lot of not great players. So if you're talking, Dynasty Fantasy, something to keep in mind there. But I still really like him. I think he has the skill set required to overcome that kind of thing because he doesn't have to go through guys. He can set them up well enough. And he's best route runner in the class. I think just about everybody agrees on that, and that's what the Vikings are getting.
I would agree from my film breakdown as well. Like, what's the first thing you learn as a DB? Watch the belly button, watch the core.
Yeah,
he's really
hips don't
good
lie.
as switching that up to make sure that they bite somewhere and he's going somewhere else. And he's got really good hand
Right.
motion in his route running too. So I really like that of him. But you're right. He is the best at that this year. He's the best route runner. I agree.
Yeah, something to look for in receivers is if your hips and your shoulders can like move in different, like not in tandem with each other, and Addison's can. I think that's a really big thing in his favor.
I think, yeah, a lot of guys like this do fail in the NFL, but I think a big aspect that I think might help Addison is, well, he has TJ Hawkinson and he's got Justin Jefferson there as well, so that he doesn't have to be the big, lot of.
He doesn't have to go against the biggest guy, right?
Exactly. So I think that'll help him tremendously.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing was about that landing spot for him. Talking pre-draft, Chargers and the Vikings were the two spots I wanted to see Addison land. I love the Minnesota Vikings with him, Justin Jefferson on the other side. I just think he can be a really successful guy in real life and in fantasy. He's a guy I'm grabbing in the middle, early to middle rounds, first round all the time if I can get him. I just think he can put up really good numbers with Kirk Cousins and Hawkinson. Not having to be the guy, I think, really helps him, as opposed to if he went to one of these teams where he was having to be number one wide receiver. Might be a little bit different story as far as that's concerned. Jumping on, they really took a look at the secondary, something that seemed like they wanted to fix. Malachi Blackman, USC cornerback, and then Jay Ward, safety out of LSU Tigers in the second and third round there. Third and fourth round there for the Vikings. Kind of talk about them in the secondary and what the Vikings are trying to do there.
I mean, they needed to get a little bit younger in those two positions for sure, and I think they did that. Jay Ward is a good. I liked his pick. I like Blackman too, but I mean, they were still there in the third and fourth rounds for some reasons. They're not the perfect prospects, but I think we have enough. I think Jay Ward being with Harrison Smith is going to be the biggest aspect and biggest driving factor for him, is because I think he can play like that. But he's also really good in coverage, and I don't know what it says about Cameron Bynum, but I don't know. What's your take on that, Luke?
I don't think he's going to play the same position as like Bynum and Scene. At LSU, it was hard to like nail down exactly what his position was because the way that their defense aligned things, he played, I'll call it the apex, which is a lot of times that's the nickel corner that can be, but if there's only one receiver on that side, he'll tuck in and line up as like a linebacker. And sometimes that person will rotate back and actually be a safety. He was listed as a safety, but I don't think he plays really the same like position truly as like Scene, Bynum, Harrison Smith, and all that. It's probably going to make more sense to think of him as like a nickel cornerback, but that's still like oversimplifying it. Apex is the right word. You just have to understand. Apex is just the second guy in. The corner, the apex, and then the way I know it, the next guy in is called like the hook or the mic or whatever, but I call him the hook. As the apex, that is a lot of covering slot receivers. That's a lot of dropping off into like shallow zones. And it still requires a lot of the same safety skill sets like range, which he has. He can, break on a play on the other side of the field. If he takes the right angle, he can like catch up to someone, right? So that range, that ability to cover a lot of ground at the same time he has. He's just a really, really reckless tackler. And he'll light someone up, and there's all kinds of cool highlights on the just bombs or whatever, but that's going to lead to, he'll leave his feet. He'll, he doesn't look at what he hits. That can lead to injuries, flags, but more commonly, maybe more minor, but more common, missed tackles. You leave your feet. It's really easy to juke you. You can't exactly adjust, right? When you're not on your feet. So that's I think the Jay Ward thing with Mekhi Blackman. I wasn't as big of a fan of that pick personally. I think that his size is going to really be in trouble. And I think that he has he's a smaller corner. And he doesn't, I think, have the diverse footwork you would expect of a guy that's coming out at 24. He went through the JUCO route. There's a reason that he's coming out that old, and that's because the earlier part of his career, he got hurt in high school his junior year, and so he didn't have like any tape for recruiters, and he kind of was fighting against that tide for all of college, and it took him a long time. That's why he used his extra eligibility, did the grad transfer to USC thing. But for him, I don't see enough polish on his back pedal. So there's lots of different footwork choices that a corner can make, whether they turn their hips and shuffle, whether they just back pedal directly, whether they go all the way and they bail out, turn and run entirely. And those are all decisions that he makes. He's almost always either bailing or shuffling, and so it compromises his hips. And that is something that savvy route runners can take advantage of. Something that I think he probably got beat a lot on going up against Jordan Addison every day at USC. So I think that there's a lot to teach him. There's some rawness to him, and it's like he's raw, and then also he doesn't have a great body type, and also he's old. That's not one that I love too much, but he is in a wide open competition right now. If he can beat out a Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth, prove me wrong, I'd be thrilled with it.
Yeah, I mean, and I was just looking at it. He came in at the same height and weight as Jordan Addison. So, and the fact that they now have to go up against each other again in practice, I think that's only going to help him probably. So, or let's hope, anyways.
Yeah, in the fifth round, sixth pick, Jacqueline Roy got taken defensive tackle out of LSU. And then they came through with two offensive players at the end of the draft, fifth round, 29th pick in that round. Jaron Hall, the BYU quarterback, and then Dwayne McBride. A lot of people maybe had a little higher on their list as far as coming into the draft, the running back out of UAB. They picked up there in the late in the seventh round. Kind of what do you thought about those guys kind of trying to work their way, make the team, and work their way up the depth chart?
Jaquelin Roy is a tough one because he's the one guy I haven't actually done the viewing on yet. He's the guy I haven't gotten to. So I'll keep it brief, but I know that he's like primarily a run defensive tackle. He can hold his spot, hold a gap, stand up against double team, all that stuff you kind of expect. And then there's just kind of like nothing to the pass rush. There's not a lot of moves. He's just, line up and push a guy, and then you can design a blitz around that. That's what you would hope. But right now it seems like he's kind of a run game only type, which is going to mean you can only ever get so expansive of a role. And then you hope that things like develop from that over time. But that's kind of all I know about him. I know that's like pretty incomplete.
I'm an LSU fan, so I watched him, and I would say you're pretty close. He's a big guy at least. And he still played LSU. He played SEC offenses all the time. So, take that with what you will. Most of the time, it's usually defense that comes out of the SEC. But he's I thought he was a decent pick for round 5 of where he went. The one that I loved the most was Dwayne McBride. I'm glad we picked another running back, and I don't know what we're going to see out of him this year, maybe because of a lot of the people above him, because we obviously know Madison's probably going to be the starter. And then they always talk about Ty Chandler, but he's kind of the forgotten guy. But if the GM and the coach, and especially the coach right now, he keeps bringing up Ty Chandler, so he's gonna get enough reps this offseason that McBride might not be able to withstand that. And then Nwangwu is our kick returner, punt returner. So, but I did film breakdown on Dwayne McBride, and I liked what I saw, especially his LSU tape. It might have been 10 rushes for 38 yards and a touchdown, but that was pretty much all their offense. So it wasn't. I was kind of impressed on what I already saw from that tape, and how even when Roy was in the backfield ready to tackle him, he was still falling forward and really negating negative yards.
He's a really good miss tackle forcer. He's really good at making you miss, and especially in open space. So for me, if I were trying to design an offense with him in mind, I would try to get him the ball in space with either screens. Now, he didn't receive the ball at all at LSU. I think he had at UAB, he had 4 catches his entire 4-year college career. He just didn't do that. That's more of a factor of UAB. They run faked to him on like most of their pass plays. And when he did go out for a check down, he wasn't really part of the read. The quarterback just wouldn't really ever get to the check down because, college QBs, what are you going to do? But he's, I think the two things to really understand about him are, like Cody was kind of getting at, forcing missed tackles, like really setting a guy up and being able to juke across him and really being able to ruin your angle with that athleticism, that shiftiness. And that one's a lot more apparent. And then I think the thing that nobody is talking about is pass pro. He is very, very, very good at pass pro. His pass blocking is, I think, part of the reason he didn't get a lot of catches is because he was so much more valuable in the protection, which, that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but that carries plenty of value. So that's what I really like about him. And I think he can sneak onto the team from scrimmage. But like Cody said, Madison is the real guy. Like, we're on a dynasty show. Don't spend something on Dwayne McBride that you care about. 5th round rookie draft, like whatever, throw a pickup at him, stash him on your bench. Why not? But it's Alexander Madison's team. And I think Ty Chandler, he is currently in a 1-for-1 splitting reps camp battle with Kene Nwangwu. Like, as we record, they're doing mini camp and they are splitting second team reps. Okay. Dwayne McBride didn't participate in OTAs with a hamstring thing he was dealing with from college. Hopefully that's over sooner rather than later, but those things kind of tend to linger. We might not get that till real camp, but those two guys are splitting reps. I think Ty Chandler will win the battle just based on what I've seen from tape out of both of those guys. And then for McBride and Nwangwu, it's about, hey, once you're RB3 or RB4, you need to show your worth on special teams to make the roster. Nwangwu, not a problem, right? He's a kick returner. He's maybe the best kick returner in the league right now. You could argue the guy from the Packers, there's another guy, but like top 3, right? So he makes the team.
Bring up Packers right now, yeah.
Right. And then it's, can McBride do stuff on special teams, or can he overcome Ty Chandler, which I think will be difficult for a rookie to do. I think they're really high on Ty Chandler. There's a reason for that. I'm happy to get into further if you want, but
yeah, why?
That's where I'm at. I love the McBride pick. It's an uphill battle for him to make the team his first year, but hey, you're on the practice squad, come back, futures contract stuff. Not an unreasonable path for a 7th rounder to take. In fact, 6th rounder on the team right now, Blake Brandel, did that exact same thing. He didn't make the team his first year, came back, made the team. Now he's a backup depth, has a role. That's a fine path for him to take. But if you're stashing a guy, Ty Chandler's probably the guy that you can stash that doesn't cost anything, and maybe he has his breakout. But odds on thing is that it's Alexander Madison, and then you get like 4 carries a game for everybody else and spelling him.
So keep me honest. Ty Chandler was the back after Javonte Williams, right? At UNC when they came out.
Oh yeah.
What do you see from him that? Because when I watched his tape last year, I wasn't really impressed by Ty Chandler, and that's the pick I hated the most out of the 2022 draft. And I don't know, I couldn't see it. I guess. What did you see that I'm missing?
The thing for me, if I remember, he was a big pass pro guy. Again, similar to McBride. That was a thing. So that matters a lot to me because the passing game is more important than the running game. And for running backs, we have to kind of figure out what the real value to a team is. It's not as relevant to fantasy, but I think it is relevant insofar as it predicts snap share, right? But for me, watching the preseason, and I actually just put a video up on my Patreon. It's currently patrons only, but it'll get unlocked soon. Is fast eyes. So when you're watching a play, especially on zone runs, it's really dramatic, so you can see it. And if you watch just the horns on his helmet, you can kind of see where they're looking, right? And on an outside zone run, you're aiming yourself at the backside of the tackle, right? Rear end of the tackle. And then if the defensive end does something dumb and doesn't rush outside the tackle, which never happens, then you take that thing outside and it's just an outside like sweep run, right? But basically you like look at that and say, okay, defensive end is on the outside like he always is. Then you move to the B gap in, and then A gap, backside A gap, and you just move your way across, right? So you can actually see like eyes, boom, 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 boom. And with Madison, who's the fastest of this, because he's, of course, right, he's the veteran. You will see he's on gap like 3 before he even gets the ball. And Ty Chandler's not too far behind him. You watch Wongwu do that, and he will stare stuff down. He will get caught up in the read. He'll be, 2 steps into the run with the ball, and he's on gap 3. Same time, Ty Chandler's there at the mesh point. So that quicker read is going to lead to better decision-making and more time to make a decision too. If you really do have to think about it, hey, at least you have time to do it. But I think the thing that holds him back is that his feet are a little bit uncontrolled and inefficient, I guess is what I'll say. Everything is set up for a big jump cut, and there are a lot of running backs like that, young running backs like that, and I think it's better for them to just don't try to juke every single guy. Just pick your lane and go take it. And if you get tackled, you get tackled. You probably got 4 or 5 yards. We're happy with that. But there's a greed, I think, to a lot of young running backs where they always want to and madden their way into the big play. Yep. That's where I'm at on Chandler. That's why I think he wins that battle. But make no mistake, he's not better than Alexander Madison, and Alexander Madison isn't better than Dalvin Cook was. So this is not a room that has a superstar or anything in it yet. Keep these guys are either stashes or with Madison, I think in redraft leagues. I mean, this is a bench player, right? I don't think this dude is your every week starter necessarily. Maybe like a borderline flex, that kind of thing.
I guess the only guy we haven't talked about is
obviously good talk over there with Dalvin Cook being gone. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, JT.
Oh, no, jump into Jaron Hall. That's what I was going to talk about, quarterbacks and some other guys that maybe are jumping out to you at camp that might be relevant this year, maybe second or third year guys or new guys that are fresh on the team that looking to expect some stuff from this year.
I'll jump in on Jaron Hall first because I did a little bit of film breakdown on him, and I was worried. I mean, and this is an unfair remark, but it's what I thought is he's just like the other BYU quarterback in the league right now, and that's Zach Wilson. It was just, he's got a big arm, but if it was kind of the same coaching staff and stuff like that, how disciplined is he when he has to be the guy? And I know he doesn't have to be the guy because we have Kirk Cousins, so that's good. But after this year, then what's going to happen? I think he's an older guy that will play a good backup. And I think if we need him to come in during a game, I think he can get it done for us. But, with what JT said, who's sticking out for you, and what are your thoughts on Jaron Hall?
Yeah, so I'm not too far off of you. I love Jaron Hall as a pick. I think it was a great pick. I think he is destined to be like a Josh McCown style career where he just like bounces to 20 teams and they're all the McVay teams. At BYU, that offense that they ran, incredibly similar DNA, kind of basically the same stuff. Maybe they had different names, but you watch that and that's a McVay offense. That looks like the 2018 Rams. So that scheme fit was really exciting to me, but also he's got a very good arm. One of the biggest college quarterback litmus tests to me is the opposite hash go ball or an opposite hash like sideline throw. And those are all over his tape. He can make that throw. That is awesome. That's something that he has over somebody like Hendon Hooker cannot make that throw consistently. Will Levis, not consistent. Anthony Richardson, not like these guys that went first, second round. Jaron Hall has that throw consistently. The reason he fell, old. He spent a couple years between high school and college doing a mission. So his college career was put back a little bit. He's 25, I think, coming out. That's really, really old. And you had the COVID eligibility stuff. And so it's like really extreme. So that's going to bring it down. Injury issues all over the place. He was hurt a ton. And I think the biggest thing is he has bozo interceptions. That's what I call him. Just the like brain fart. What were you thinking? Heaved something really stupid up. For Vikings fans, think Case Keenum in the Minneapolis Miracle game, that Marcus Williams one where he just got under pressure and he threw up a 500 ball. And they came down with it. And you're like, what in the world? What were you thinking? And they walk off going, my goodness, what was I thinking? He's got a few too many of those. And so I don't see this guy as like a true starter. But I think comparing him to Zach Wilson, it's really funny because Zach Wilson, 5th round prospect. Okay, yeah, that tracks. Yeah, sure. I had a 3rd round grade on Jaron Hall, though. So I think he's, for example, again, for Vikings fans, I think that he's markedly better than Kellen Mond was coming out. Kellen Mond ended up going 66. So I feel good about his ability to be the guy that competes with your rookie and doesn't win the competition, or the guy that starts for you for 4 weeks, but we all know the rookie's going to come in eventually, that kind of thing.
So he's going to be the Kevin O'Connell.
Maybe the Kevin O'Connell. Wow, who's the guy? Matt Flynn, that kind of thing. That kind of career trajectory. And yeah, if that guy has to come in and start 2 games, you're not panicking, right? But for now, he still has to beat Nick Mullins to even make the squad. 5th round pick does not guarantee you a 53-man roster spot. So as high as I am on him, you still have to understand I could get totally owned by him, missing the team. On the rules recently changed to make a 3rd quarterback maybe a more attractive option. So 3 quarterbacks absolutely is in the realm of possibility here. And maybe the Vikings wouldn't cut Jaren Hall in fear that he'll get poached or whatever. But that's going to be like the backup battle. Be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I was going to see who else is standing out in camp, either offensively or defensively on this team, that we think might have a shot to either fantasy relevant or just guys on defense. Obviously, this team really struggled defensively last year, and that's going to be a big emphasis this year for the Vikings.
We should probably mention Jalen Naylor, who's been kind of the guy of camp that everybody's paying a lot of attention to. He's gotten first team reps because Justin Jefferson wasn't at OTAs. He did show up to minicamp, by the way. And Jordan Addison has been sidelined with some minor ding. So wide receiver 4, Jalen Naylor, which he was 5 last year. So he's already come up the depth chart just based off of tape evaluation from 2022. Leapfrogging Jalen Reagor, who I don't know if he even makes the team at this point. But Naylor has he's had a couple of really spicy days. He's maybe a guy to watch. I don't know if I believe in him that much. I think he's kind of just fast. And that's why he was like a 5th or 6th round pick instead of like a serious wide receiver. But hey, if you're looking for somebody to like randomly show up and be the guy that has some hot waiver wire moment in December, Naylor might be the guy, right? 2 injuries away, and then suddenly he's in getting volume, and maybe he can be a boomer bust. Maybe he gets a touchdown, but that's his only catch of the day kind of day.
You think KJ Osborne can make a bump?
From a fantasy perspective, I think all these guys like Osborne, Addison, especially Naylor, who again, like, don't spend anything on Jalen Naylor. If you've got an extra bench spot, go for it, do whatever, but don't like spend anything on these guys. I think KJ Osborne has probably the upside of like a flex. Like he's probably going to be a steady Eddie kind of guy that gets you like 7 fantasy points every week, but he'll never do more. Or maybe you're just hoping he gets a touchdown. That's possible. He'll be in the game for sure. I think he'll split the role a little bit with Addison, where on like bigger personnel packages where there's more running, you're going to want KJ out there because Addison can't block. He's too small. And he doesn't throw himself into the block at all. Sometimes he can't even find the block. He really struggled with that at USC. It was pretty disgusting. But you get into 11 personnel with all 3 of those guys on the field, and then I wouldn't be surprised to see Jordan Addison get more targets out of those personnel packages to functionally be the wide receiver 2 when it's 11 personnel, even though he would maybe get fewer snaps. So look, KJ will be on the field, and that's a lot of times all you're looking for with fantasy, but all of these guys are going to be fighting uphill because Justin Jefferson's going to get the lion's share of targets, and I wouldn't be surprised to see TJ Hawkinson be second in targets. And so the rest of them are going to be fighting over scraps.
I was watching some of your tape on Twitter, Luke, and you had some really good film breakdown on Ed Ingram. So we pretty much have our guards set, and it looks like Bradbury is going to be our center. Is O'Neal's injury, what was it, a partially torn Achilles? Is he going to be coming back?
It was an Achilles.
Good.
I think I don't know. I mean, they're always going to be really cagey about this, so we don't know. But I believe the expectation right now, they're hoping to get him back for week 1, but that doesn't seem to be a guarantee. Like they feel pretty good about getting him back for week 1 or maybe even the start of camp or whatever, but it's not a guarantee. That ACL injuries for linemen or Achilles injuries for linemen are really, really hard. A partial one is great. It means the surgery doesn't have to be as crazy, which means the recovery from it doesn't have to be as crazy. So it's good news, but not too far outside the realm of possibility that we open the season against Tampa with Blake Brandel. Like, that's definitely something to look for.
Moving on, just kind of looking at the schedule for the year after that came out. Wide open NFC North, kind of giving your feelings on just the division, where you think the Vikings fit in. Obviously, a team that won a lot of close games last year in that division. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers gone for the Packers. They're looking new. Everybody kind of loves the Lions, but the Lions are the Lions. Where do you feel like the Vikings fit in this year?
You know, the Lions, they're always Lionsing. I mean, that's it, right? It's the Lions are the favored team. Yeah, by like all sports books. But can Jared Goff be serious, right? How much does this team has basically built itself into a physical run first team. We know how successful that tends to be the Vikings just fired Mike Zimmer for wanting to build that kind of team a couple years ago, right? So we'll see where that ends up, but they'll be the most physical team in the division. They'll bruise you, they'll bump you. I wouldn't be surprised to be sitting here in January and going, wow, the NFC North didn't produce a team above 500 and they sent some 8-9 team to the playoffs. Could be the Vikings, could be the Lions, could be anybody, right? I don't think that the Bears are very serious yet. I don't think they're expecting to be taken seriously yet. They're still kind of in the middle of they're in the lab a little bit, still building something. And then it's with the Packers, it's just, is Jordan Love real? And if not, then things are going to get dark over there in Green Bay.
All right, this is my time to shine, JT. I've heard enough slander from Chicago Bears fans, some of your friends from Illinois here, saying that the Bears and the Lions are finally going to be at the top of this division. And it's not going to happen. And we cannot say the Lions are going to be first until they prove it to us. And for the last 20 years, they haven't proved it to us. All right. So are they going to be better? Yes. But they're still going to be an 8-9, 9-8 team. And like Luke said, that might win the division, but let's slow our roll on those guys first. And you know what? A lot of Vikings teams are usually in this position where they're getting counted out. And that's exactly where I want them to be. Because we have to also remember that our defense is a little bit younger, but Brian Flores is there. And from what I've heard is the line and the offense is like, wow, we haven't seen this much pop in a defensive practice or in a practice at all, probably for a year and a half. That's huge coming out of OTAs and minicamp already. That's what Brian Flores is bringing. So I'm pretty excited to see, at least a few blitz packages finally happening this year, unlike last year.
Right.
Just base.
And that forces guys to get the ball out fast. And that has been pretty famous issue for those two quarterbacks in Chicago and Detroit is, holding the ball and just send 70% pressure at those guys. And hey, if they can come up with it, if they can get their blitz counters right and they get the win, like some teams are just going to be able to counter you and all right, so be it. We just gave up 40 points. But I think sometimes with those younger quarterbacks like Fields, I wonder how Love is on this stuff. And I think this has been a problem for Goff his whole career with some of those guys. I think the thesis is let's just send a million pressures at those guys and they kind of maybe, and then hope they fall apart. And yeah, if they don't, then power to you. You did it.
At the end of the day, we have to look at quarterback play too. And this is the first time in a long time that you can't say that Green Bay has the best quarterback. And even though Kirk Cousins has a lot of point of contention, you cannot put any of those three guys above him right now. So we might actually just have to play it on that. Kirk Cousins is probably the best quarterback. You know what? I'll say is the best quarterback in the division right now. If he can knock Kirk Cousins on primetime, we should be good to go.
Yeah. You can give it to Jared Goff only if you can prove to me that he can understand a play call on the road. There's a big problem on the road for the Lions. And I think the reason for it is that Jared Goff in the pre-snap process, like the lined up pre-snap reading, all that stuff, the Lions need to get to the ball there really fast so that he can still have a coach in his ear helping him with that stuff. That was a thing in Los Angeles, and I still think it's a thing. We haven't heard about it in Detroit, but it's a thing until proven otherwise. So go on the road with a loud crowd, dial in a blitz counter, adjust a protection at the line of scrimmage, and then we can talk about Jared Goff as a serious quarterback. But until then, you're putting a physical run first roster around a quarterback that you do not trust.
I feel like like you guys said, the Cousins situation, he's the best quarterback in division. With their kind of offense, if they can improve anything on defense, I like the Vikings to win this division. They're actually one of the bets I like as far as what their odds are sitting at. Like you said, I think this is a 9-8, maybe 10-7 team wins this division. It's just that kind of division. I feel like there's a lot of divisions that way this year. And the NFL definitely wants to keep the Kirk Cousins primetime talk going. I think they have 5 primetime games this year. The Vikings do. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to get all kinds of chances to kind of
always good TV.
Him in the past of being a bad primetime player. Absolutely. So, but again, like a team that won a lot of close games last year, I think they're better than people are expecting, but I also think the division is worse than people kind of think, just because they want to be high on the Bears and they want to be high on the Lions. I just think the Vikings are the sneaky pick in this division right now.
Really buttering me up right now. I like it.
Oh, truth to power, baby.
Yeah, Cohen, we're going to close this thing out here pretty quickly. Give me kind of your last thoughts on just overall where you think this Vikings team is, where they're going, post-Dalvin Cook era, Madison kind of taking over, and what does the future look like? Does Kirk Cousins stay there? Do they try to move on? Do they give him, a couple, 1 or 2 big year deals where they just keep him for a little bit? Kind of give me your future of kind of what you see coming in the next year or two for the Vikings.
Boy. The next year or two, I think, there's a lot of temporary stuff. I think there is a lot of change that we don't know about yet, roster wise. They have like 2 players actually under contract for 2025 right now. Obviously, that is going to change over the next 2 years, but that means that's going to come with a lot of additions, extensions. Who's actually going to be a part of this? We kind of don't know. The Vikings have like a roster cobbled together right now. It does not, I don't think that it looks 100% like the roster, we're going to see in 2024 at all. And even for this coming year, there's still additions, changes that could be made. What's going to happen with the Neil Hunter, all that stuff. What are they going to do with that cap space? Questions we still have. What does this thing look like? We really do not have a great sense at all for what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is building. And maybe we can be a little nervous about why everything is so temporary, why every deal is 1-2 years, why nobody got extensions. I mean, extensions are being negotiated right now, so 4 weeks from now, this probably won't be a talker. But, there's a lot of unknowns right now. I think this is truly a franchise crossroads. And I don't know. We'll see what path they pick, and then we'll have a better sense. We'll be able to do a lot more podcasts about it.
I think along those lines is I'm happy that we kind of have this. We have a new coach and we have a new GM, and people already want to write them off. But let's just see what they do. I want to see what they can actually do and what they can build, because they've had to move on from the Spielman draft 12 players, and I'm sure that made your job a lot harder, Luke, going through all that tape.
Draft day is exhausting.
But then doing that and then sign and extend them every time. It's like, we should know who the player is after their 4th or 5th year already. Let's not sign them to a second contract just because they deserve the money. So I'm a Minnesota sports fan that is wanting better results. I mean, it's been so long since we've even had just playoff happiness. So I'm excited for the future, even though there is a lot of unknowns. And I fully back the coach. I really like the coach. I really like the GM so far, and how they even just approach media is, I think, even a little bit better than what we've had in the past.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for talking Vikings with me. Luke, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter, social medias, all that stuff, your podcast, and then same thing with you, Cody.
Sure. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast wherever you find your favorite shows. You can find it on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter as well at Locked On Vikings. You can send me questions whenever. I do mailbags every Tuesday where I will eventually get to them if I don't answer them outright right there. And then if you go to patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL, that's where you get the good stuff, the film breakdowns, the actual visual stuff, things that are a little more produced than a podcast that's like an audio medium. It's really hard to show things. So I do encourage you to go check that out. Most of the stuff on my Patreon is free to watch, except for like the most recent posts are early access, and then eventually they get unlocked. So go check it out. And if you like it, I'd love it if you join.
Yeah, and I'm Cody Folden at Cody Folden on Twitter. I work for Dynasty Pros. I do about an article a week on some guys. Just dropped one on David Montgomery. So you can check me out there. But like Luke said, please go give him a follow and stuff. I don't think you guys get how good of a film breakdown he does. So I really like it. I really enjoy it. And I'm kind of a nerd on that kind of thing too. Like I just love watching tape and watching film. So if you're into that, Luke is your man.
Thanks again, guys, for joining us. That's going to do it for us here on the Stew with JT Brew. Check out my guys. Give them a follow and a like. All that good stuff. We'll be back later on as we continue our NFL series, breaking down all the NFL teams in the draft and what we can look forward to the upcoming years. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
You up on trades and why you move. You ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing. Racking up points makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release. We started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of.